Good morning, Global Innovation Forum 2019.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Oh, let's do it again. Come on.
Yes.
It's Thursday, or Wednesday. God, I'm getting ahead. It's that time of year, isn't it? We're all looking forward to Christmas, perhaps, or feeling that Christmas is coming too quickly. So, good morning, Global Innovation Forum 2019.
Good morning.
Ah, that's much better. Thank you. So, as Max has said, we've got a wonderful array of speakers, workshops, and of course, a hugely diverse range of attendees. And frankly, you guys are the people who we always think make this special, drawn from so many different parts of the world, companies, areas of expertise, and that diversity is so rich. Now, I've got the pleasure of being your chairman for what is the 6th time I've worked out the other day. Makes me feel very old. And I hope it's not going to get very tedious, but you might have heard some of the jokes before. Max and the Selectivity team obviously do most of the hard work behind the scenes, so please don't give me any credit for inviting all these wonderful speakers you're going to see. But by way of introduction, I'm CEO of a company called Brand Genetics, and we are a global growth consultancy. And we believe that in a world that's changing ever faster, well, the one constant is human nature. Human nature moves at Darwin's law rather than Moore's law. And so we take a human-first approach to unlocking growth. And what that means, what human-first means, is thinking of your consumer as a human being, uncovering their deeper motivations, exploring their real behavior, and mapping out their changing expectations, because they really are changing. And what that enables us to do is identify and define the ways that are relevant for our clients to innovate and transform for future growth. So that's me, that's enough about me and Brand Genetics. But over to you guys, the misfits, the rebels, the crazy ones that the Apple ad famously put in. Because you do kind of have to be crazy to work in innovation, don't you? As George Bernard Shaw said, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. But I think you should try telling that to senior management. Because in all companies, and especially big ones, as those of you from larger corporations will appreciate, really the drive is to efficiency. People improve performance by reducing errors. And innovation comes along and it tries to disrupt. It tries to change the status quo. It's risky. It's treated with, by most of the business, suspicion. And we know that things have to change. Because in most categories, what we find is that the growth is not coming from the big corporates, it's coming from the innovative young startups. And so business has to find a way to balance its need for certainty with the kind of risk that goes with innovation. Otherwise you end up like a Kodak, or a Blockbuster, or a Borders, or a BlackBerry. They all begin with B, so if you're in a company that doesn't begin with B, you might be okay, I don't know. Now recently, big data has come along. And big data has been seen as somewhat of a savior, a way for companies to have a sort of look into the future, a way to make better decisions faster, a way to kind of uncover emerging customer needs. So I wanted to start by sharing a few insights from big data that I thought might interest you. So the first one is this, I'll share 3, they've all got a link. So mozzarella and engineering doctorates. Well, it might surprise you to know that the data clearly shows that if the US government wants more qualified engineers, it should really be encouraging people to eat more mozzarella cheese. That's what the data tells us. What about divorce and margarine? Yeah, you didn't think they were connected, did you? But they are, especially if you live in the state of Maine, where, again, the data clearly shows that if you want a long and happy marriage, you should just stick to butter. And finally, what links pool safety and Nicolas Cage? Well, I'm here to tell you that given the new Nicolas Cage movie is out just a few days ago, it's probably best to stay out of the pool. And I would suggest potentially the cinemas too. But anyway, these correlations are clearly drawn from data. And whilst we can all have a bit of a laugh at them, you know, what it does show is, of course, correlations can be misleading. It's not really intended to discredit big data, which can clearly have huge value, but it does perhaps point to why it hasn't been the silver bullet that we were all hoping for. You can have all the data you want, you see, but if you don't understand the why behind the what, then it's meaningless. And as this recent analysis by Nielsen showed, 3 in 4 consumer product launches still fail within a year. So clearly, despite big data, we're still missing something. So where does that leave us? Where can we look to for innovation success and to fuel growth? Well, it turns out that the Nielsen analysis also pointed to one key innovation success factor. And they said, successful innovation is the result of walking in the shoes of the consumer to uncover key demand-driven insights. Or as we might put it, empathy. Our ability to see and feel things from someone else's perspective. Now, as Max has already alluded to, the conference theme this year is Don't Be Evil, which really is about sort of celebrating the positive role innovation can have in doing good. It's about championing inclusivity and diversity and generally taking a more human-centered approach in what we do. And I would argue that empathy is a key skill that facilitates all those positive things. And the good news is it can enhance innovation too. Now, the real innovators have always known the power of empathy. This is perhaps a lesser-known Henry Ford quote. If there's any one secret of success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from his angle as well as your own. Now, it wouldn't be an innovation presentation without a Steve Jobs quote, right? So, he was famously anti-market research, but he was very pro-customer closeness, or empathy as we might term it. And what he believed was empathy was about as close as you got to mind reading. And the scientist in the room, or the psychologist in the room, I know there's at least one, would tell you he's probably right. And we're going to hear from Microsoft over the next couple of days, but here's Satya Nadella, the CEO, and over the last 5 years, he has transformed that business. He's tripled the share price, and they're now the most valuable company in the world again. And if you ask him the secret of his success, he will say it's empathy. And he has put it at the heart of the Microsoft innovation process. Now, I'm not here to claim empathy is a silver bullet. There are some very significant weaknesses and limitations. Empathy is, I would say proudly, emotional, not rational. Empathy is personally subjective. Empathy is not done particularly well at scale. But when we take the power of empathy and we link it up with the power of big data, that's where they both offset each other's weaknesses and the magic happens. However, there's a but coming, I'm afraid. While we live in a world that's awash with data, the other half of the equation is sorely lacking. We are experiencing an empathy deficit. By some measures, empathy in society is an all-time low. And I think we can see this sadly in the world around us, whether it's Brexit, whether it's Hong Kong riots, whether it's Trump versus Black Lives Matter, or all of those sort of things going on in the States. And as marketers, as innovators, this empathy deficit is really costing us. Companies are losing money. By this calculation, global brands each lose on average $300 million a year. Companies are losing reputation. The empathy deficit accounts for a gap of 69 NPS score points. And frankly, companies are just losing touch with what it means to be a real consumer. And I'd actually argue that it is our fetishization of data that is part of the cause for this. Because as has been shown in communication, when we over-rely on tech, our empathy falls away. If this is how you communicate with your loved one, you're losing that personal touch. And so the same is true for innovation. Too much reliance on data actually decreases our empathic ability. It's like we're losing touch with the real world. We're stuck in some weird parallel universe. Empathy is about individuals, but data dehumanizes, reducing real people to faceless data points. Empathy is about emotion, as Kahneman has shown, the driving force of most human decisions. But again, empathy, like Spock, is emotionless. It's purely rational. And without emotion, we lose motion, the power to motivate. And empathy is face-to-face, it's real world, but too often we're chained to our desks, slaves to the black mirror, misled by all this data around us that we understand the real world of our customers without ever really needing to set foot into it. So you can see the challenge. We must reduce the empathy deficit if we want to drive innovation that's both positive and successful. So, how empathic are you? Yeah, I'm getting some smiles now because people know what might be coming. Well, you can't change what you don't measure. So I thought it would be fun to give you all a little bit of a test. And people's eyes are incredibly expressive of their emotions. Our ability to read those are a great sort of guide to our empathic ability. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you a series of 5 different sets of eyes with 4 choices of emotion. I'm going to ask you to choose which one they are by a show of hands. So, you know, we're all friends here, or we will be by the end. Just to say, this is based on a clinical test. This is the emotion, the right emotion is not my decision. It's based on work by University of Cambridge psychologists and validated with 10,000 people. So, are you ready? This one was panicked. Yeah, you feeling that way? So, here we go. Okay, playful, comforting, irritated, or bored. Can everyone see that? Okay. So, hands up for playful. Oh, lots of playful. Hands up for comforting. Hands up for irritated. And hands up for bored. That's irritated this guy, not just with my talk. So, just playful. The playful crowd were right. This is, yeah. So keep your own scores. Panicked, incredulous, despondent, or interested. Hands up for panicked. Hands up for incredulous. Hands up for despondent. And hands up for interested. Oh, we are an empathic bunch. This is good. This is pointless. I don't know why I'm doing this talk to you. Hands up for terrified. Have a look. I'll give you a moment. Terrified, upset, arrogant, or annoyed. Hands up for terrified. Hands up for upset. Hands up for arrogant. Hands up for annoyed. Okay. Well done, you're doing well. I think an ultimate one. Decisive, amused, aghast, bored. Hands up for decisive. Hands up for amused. Hands up for aghast. Hands up for bored. Okay, last one. Have a look. Joking, insisting, amused, or relaxed. Hands up for joking. Hands up for insisting. Hands up for amused. And hands up for relaxed. Well done. So, I think you did pretty well. If you got 5, you can count yourself as a kind of pretty much an empath, as close to a mind reader as it gets. Well done. 3 out of 5 or less, I'd say this is something you need to work on. Hopefully no one got 0, because scientists have also shown that a lack of empathy is linked to being a serial killer. So perhaps keep that one to yourself. Anyway, Max is waving his famous sign at me. So, look, I think the point is that while some people are naturally empathic, we can all learn to develop and build this as a skill. And there are empathy techniques that can help you research and innovate better. And to this end, I am delighted to say that people much smarter than me have been working for a few months on creating our first sort of empathy playbook. And you lucky people will find one of these in your conference bag, hot off the press. This is really a curated source of practical empathy-based research techniques to show you how to walk in the shoes of your consumer and uncover demand-driven insights. There are 8 empathy plays or techniques or methodologies, and they're drawn from the worlds of medicine, therapy, design, investigative journalism that all use empathy successfully. And just to take a very quick dive into one of them, back to our linking questions, what links Pixar's Ratatouille, George Orwell, and Victorian sweatshops? Well, the answer is empathy immersions. And just to explain very briefly, Pixar had their animators crawling through the sewers of Paris. They sent some to the French Laundry, which was a famous Michelin-starred restaurant, but others had to go through the sewers of Paris. Bit of a downer, that one. And that's where much of the movie action takes place, so that really got them in the mode. Down and out in Paris, in London, George Orwell lived as a tramp for weeks at a time in both those cities to see what it really felt like. And a lady called Beatrice Webb, who was a social reformer, went undercover in Victorian London to see what working in a sweatshop was really like. And when she published the results, it caused a public and political outcry that led to reform. So you can see it's pretty potent stuff. Now, the empathy immersion does just this. Put simply, it involves immersing yourself as a consumer to experience firsthand what things feel like from their perspective. What's key is to become immersed in a real situation rather than a simulated one, and to act as a participant rather than as an observer. And there are a number of key guidelines in the book. I'll take you through just 3. The first is dress and act in character. You should really go for this, right? We had a hosiery brand where we got the male clients to wear tights when they went out, albeit under their trousers. We granted them that. But to see what it really felt like. The second one is empathy is about an emotional insight. So the key is to be aware of your own emotions and moods and capture how you feel and understand what's driving those emotions. And last, by all means, video record, capture on audio, take photos, but actually meaningful artifacts that relate to something that moved or touched you are really powerful. I did an empathy immersion in China, Chinese nightlife, and I had to go and get some of those lyre dice because that was what I really remember people playing in all the karaoke and in all the sort of nightclubs. It was very evocative for me. So anyway, this is something that we run with a lot of our clients. We actually had about 85 clients on the streets of London last night from a major brewer, figuring out what the world looks like through the eyes of a beer drinker rather than being a beer maker. And it's really powerful. I can't answer questions now, but I'll be around if anyone does want to know more, as will some of my colleagues. But I think what's important is that when we do this, our clients tell us they find it really impactful because it's not just about uncovering fresh insight. It's about the people who are doing it, uncovering it from themselves. And that really drives that sense of wanting to change things and that sense of taking that ownership and passion forwards. So if you're trying to get something through your business, find a way that you can immerse and involve your team to see things through the eyes of their customer, their consumer. Could be really powerful. So hopefully I've made a good case for empathy and innovation and I've whetted your appetite to learn a bit more. But coming back to Don't Be Evil, just to finish off, I think empathy is not just a critical skill for innovation success, but also for doing good. And as Elizabeth Thomas suggests, society at large benefits from more empathy. Now, I truly believe that as innovators, we have the power to help create the future and shape the world we want to live in. It's something of a privilege. And if we can all show a little bit more empathy for our fellow human beings, in helping them achieve their goals, in helping drive their well-being and their happiness, then I think innovation can genuinely be a true force for good. And I believe that would be a superpower truly worth having. Thank you.